drugs, 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 drugs. Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Sister Sight, where we are going to be talking about drugs and how they affect your spirituality, your consciousness, and our first-time usages, and how they have affected us. This one's probably going to be mostly personal stories, so if you don't want to listen to a personal story,
bye.
That's right. Bye.
We're also going to be talking about poison versus medicine with substance control, and what I like to call abuse versus worship.
Bangin'. Bangin'. So, we're talking about substances, like really intense substances that alter your brain chemistry, not just a little, but like a lot. Like a lot. They help you see a different version of your own reality. They open your brain into so many different ways. Substances can be used to heighten your awareness of the subtle reality, which is awesome. I know when I get really far out sometimes, I can just totally get lost in seeing more than I'm actually aware of perceiving when I'm not. I think that's super cool.
It's like a shamanic approach with substances, like expanding consciousness and then bringing that expanded awareness into your reality.
I mean, that's, to me, is also what it's about. I know it's also about that for you. Like, it's for both of us. We both agree if you're going to be doing these substances, you can do them in a way that allows you to process your own emotional turmoil and traumas and then integrate them better into your system. However, be careful, bad trips can happen. I hear bad trips can happen.
I've had one, and that's like its own kind of trauma. So
Yeah.
I think that is why dosage is so important.
So for me, the difference between medicine and poison across the entire board, be it with food, be it with drugs, be it with pharmaceutical drugs, which are also drugs, even like touch and love. The difference between medicine and poison is dosage. If you have too high of a dosage, it's poisonous. If you have just the right dosage, then it is always medicine. And like doing too much of it is also very problematic.
Yeah, and I even want to speak to microdosing and like a sub-sensory experience with psychedelic drugs where you're not actually perceiving these changes. It's still having an effect on your brain and on your consciousness, so, and on your body. So even if it's not a perceivable change, you know, in what you're actually experiencing, it still can be medicine.
But with that medicine, be aware that you shouldn't be, I don't believe that you should be microdosing every single day for months at a time. I think your body needs a break from it so you can process it. You know, I do personally know people who microdose every day and have been microdosing every day for a wicked long time, and that's their choice, and I accept their choice. I don't fully believe that it's healthy, but I do accept their choices.
Yeah, that's definitely creating dependency. That's yeah, I have a problem with anyone who does like anything, any substance every day, like no matter the dosage.
I think that there is no medicine you have to take every single day for the rest of your life.
Oh, cat.
That was a cat.
I'm trying to get attention. Shit.
Listen here, bitch, I've been meowing.
Little shit. Anyway.
Sidetracked on the cat. She's always a sidetrack, isn't it?
Just dealing with life. Okay. Where were we?
So yeah, I think that poison is anything beyond what you need. So if you're going and reaching for more substances or more drugs in the moment, then you might be having a party moment, which is fine. But also, if you're doing this, coming to this for like spiritual growth and spiritual awareness, like expanding your awareness, you don't need to keep dipping into your bag, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, you can like wear it out, and those experiences start to lose any sort of meaning, and
Mm.
it becomes like, and there's a fine line between recreational use and abuse,
Yeah.
and a very fine line. And I think like starting out, especially my generation, when we started doing psychedelics, it was recreational. Like I don't know if we were exactly on this like spiritual pursuit as much as we were like, whoa, this is really cool. Like whatever this is doing is like super cool. And you knew you had to control your environment. You knew you had to control who you were doing it with, but you didn't necessarily think of it as like a spiritual experience, even if it was, and you just, yeah, we didn't realize it.
I feel the same when I first started doing drugs. I didn't put it together as being a spiritual experience. And then now it's like they are sacred friendships that I have with these allies that are chemically based,
Hmm.
you know, and like I am that person who prays over my drugs before I take them. What
I
up?
mean, yeah, why not? But that's putting an intention into the experience you're about to have, and like giving gratitude for this substance. So yeah, that makes sense. I always like say a little, prayer before I take the drugs.
Thank you, universe, for substances and drugs and fucking my brain up.
Yes, and like please take care of me and don't let me, you know, get too weird. I have like a lot of anxiety surrounding psychedelics, and that's something we can get into. But
I would love to.
yeah, so why don't we start it off by talking about some good old fashioned LSD?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We all like that LSD.
Lucy in the sky with diamonds. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, you are. She a good lady.
So, LSD was the first drug I ever did. I actually tried to smoke cannabis before this, but I like didn't know how to inhale smoke. I had never smoked in my life, so I would like try to hit a joint, and I would like, I would like swallow the smoke, and then be like, I don't feel anything, but my throat hurts. So stupid. I didn't know what I was doing. So anyway, the first drug that I actually felt any sort of like mind altering was acid, and I always wanted to do acid. Since I was a kid, I was like drawn to the idea of it. I read a book that was in my elementary school library, and it was called That Was Then, This Is Now, written by S.E. Hinton, who is the same author of The Outsiders. She's pretty famous. But this book is a like coming of age novel set in the 60s, and there was a character named Eminem, and he, because he always ate M&Ms, he would like walk down the road with his bag of M&Ms. He was just like this kid, and then he started doing acid, and then he got like super far out, and he was never the same again. But just reading that story in 5th grade, which I don't know why this book was in the library, I'm
For
glad it
you.
was.
It was
It
for
was there
you.
for me. So yeah, I love that. So I was just always like intrigued by the idea, and I was like, yeah, that's something I'm gonna do one day, like for sure.
Mm.
um and so when I was 18, I first moved out. I was on my own, and I was going to college, and my next door neighbor was Zach Lerman. It was the first time I met Zach, and it couldn't have aligned better in my life. And we hung out a few times, and we're like getting to know each other. And then I mentioned like, yeah, I really want to do acid one day. He's like, well, that's funny because I know a guy. So um, yeah, so we did acid together with like a group of people, and I mean, it blew my world open. It was like this, like it shattered any type of like construct of society or reality or any law or any rule that I thought was in place. It just like melted it all down, and I could see things for what they really were. And it was like everything that like made me nervous about the future, or like, oh well, I have to meet these standards, or I have to like be this certain kind of person or present myself a certain way. It just was all like down the fucking drain. And I was like, oh no, we're all here to just experience what we can and be who we are, and like let our essence be individual and unique, and let it shine on other people. And I like fell in love with myself. Like I felt like I could perceive my own essence, and I just like I was like, man, I'm like loving and compassionate and kind and good. Like I feel that I'm so like good and special. And that might sound, narcissistic, but it was in this like loving way of like, man, like I'm okay with being me. Like I feel beautiful. I feel like I have something to offer. I just feel like I'm so glad I like have myself,
Mm,
gave me like this self-appreciation. Um,
beautiful.
yeah, and I think there's one other important thing I want to say about it. So I, yeah, so I was so intrigued by acid and just like psychedelic drugs in general because I wanted to step outside of my awareness and consciousness. Like I wanted to lose my mind. That's the way I thought of it. Was like I just want to like separate myself from my mind and like have this other experience. But what I realized with acid was that I was actually like I was fusing with my own consciousness more than ever. Like you can't escape it. It is you. You are
Hmm.
it. So it gave me like a just a really cool awareness of my psyche and like the way that my mind works. And like my first time on acid was really interesting because there was even a point in the night where I had no conception of time. I thought someone was trying to kill me. Like I was convinced like someone is trying to kill me right now. But then like we went for a walk and then I like forgot that someone was trying to kill me. And then I was like, man, that was crazy. A few minutes ago I was like really scared and now I'm like feeling fine. Like, whoa. And I know most people have like a bad trip and it ruins the whole experience. But for me, it was like a moment of this like really dreadful, terrible feeling. And then it just like flipped on itself. I don't know. It was wild. But it made me feel so in control and just like, no, like I'm on acid. I'm doing it. Like I'm doing it. This is cool. I'm like having the experience.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was intense. What about you?
Acid was probably the second drug that I did. I did smoke cannabis first, which is also psychedelic. It was very psychedelic to me.
Yeah.
And
Especially on a fresh young mind. Clean
I didn't
canvas.
smoke until I was 18. I decided I was very interested in altering my reality from a very young age as well. I watched reality. I know that it's fluid. I want to change it, but I wanted to experience the reality that everyone else was experiencing, the way that I experienced it for a period of time. And then after that period of time, like when it felt right, I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to start experimenting with drugs. I'm going to start smoking weed. And I did. And then I was a senior in high school when we decided to take like a little hiking trip. And I had a friend in high school who like really went off the deep end with acid. He did not go with us, but we got it from him. He
Nice.
he was the hookup, yeah. And like seeing him and like how he really like went too far with it and like really like he ended up tripping for like 2 months straight on accident one time because
Oof.
he took too much. And like
Hmm.
that was like, okay, I have to be careful with this, but I still want to experience it. And like I was ready for full-blown hallucinations. I thought I'd be seeing dragons and like all of this stuff. LSD doesn't do that to me. It doesn't. When I have hallucinations on
Mm-mm.
LSD, it's always I see sacred geometrical shapes in everything. I see concentric circles, and everything is rainbowed. Like I
Hmm.
fully understand Lisa Frank. Lisa Frank was
Oh,
definitely a person who did a shit ton of acid and then marketed what they saw.
oh yeah.
I love it.
I love it too. And I mean, honestly, that was my favorite thing about acid was the colors. Like, no
Hmm.
doubt.
Yeah,
I never hallucinated things that weren't there either.
yeah.
It was kind of like like a different lens on what was there. But anyways, go ahead.
But I had heard stories about people who would hallucinate things that weren't there, and I wanted to see things that weren't there. I wanted my mind to create. I wanted so interested in what my mind is going to make up to see. Like, what is it going to give me to deal with? Um, so we go to the woods. We spend 2 days in the woods, 3 days, 3 days in the woods. Yeah, fuck time. Who knows? We spent some time in the woods. We took the acid and We were camping down by this creek, and there was this huge rock formation on the other side of the creek. And I remember looking at the rock, and the rock itself stayed rock, but over top of that rock, I could clearly see that it was a giant frog. And I was like, oh, you're like a frog spirit. You're like an ancient frog being that has been set in the stone. And now you're going to sit here and just look at me because you're not talking to me. And that's okay. And then I remember we started on a hike and we did not get lost, but we thought we got lost like 4 times only to realize that we had been walking around the same rock for like 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then we came across this tree that was like oozing black liquid, and I was super convinced that an evil witch had been embodied in it, and that we were like in the area that she was in, and everyone else was just like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "There's a witch in here, and she's evil. I bet she's pretty cool, but I don't want to fuck with her. But this tree's pretty nice, so I mean, she can't be that bad." And then they were just like, "Okay, Jackie, you're like crazy." But and
It's so
then
interesting how your mind like takes one little aspect of something and then like blows it up into this highlighted like experience of this object or this person, or it's so like it just embellishes it so much. It's so interesting,
it's
you
because
know?
it like I said, it opens your mind up to the subtle reality. And if you've never seen the subtle reality before, then when you first start doing substances like this, you can become hyper focused on the aspects of anything that you've never noticed before or seen before.
Mhm.
So, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's wicked cool, I think. But yeah, so that was my first like real mushroom trip. I mean, not my first LSD trip. And then I sat in my tent. Oh no, we then like started a fire, and I like stared at the fire for a little bit and then recognized that that wasn't good for my eyes. That was probably the first time I realized that I shouldn't stare at fire. And that was the first time I started staring into the darkness, like both like metaphorically and physically. Now when I sit around fires, I try not to stare into them. I try to keep my night vision good.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
It's helpful. So I started like looking up and noticing the trees like blowing in the wind, and they looked like they were dancing and
Oh
having
my
such a good
God.
time.
The
And then
trees,
I
dude.
crawled into my tent and listened to the fucking Beatles because I'm a fucking hippie about it.
Yeah. Oh, they were writing the best music for acid. Like,
Oh yeah,
yeah, my love for the Beatles and my acid experience like happened simultaneously. Because
hand
I'm
in
like, they
hand.
fucking get it. Like, they get
I get it.
it.
It's true though. It's true. And
It
Lucy in the Sky
is.
with Diamonds is absolutely amazing on acid.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the coolest things on acid is to one, be in nature and like talk to the trees because they got some shit to say. And
hmm
then two, listen to music. I mean,
hmm
yeah. I mean, I've had sex on acid, I've gone out in public on acid, and the two things I recommend are nature and music. Fuck everything else.
That's it, man. I
That's just
also agree.
Yeah, that will like, I mean, that's traumatic. That's a traumatic experience waiting to happen. The first time I did, no, not the first time. I had done mushrooms, I think, a few times, but I ended up in downtown Clarksville because I lived downtown and I was just walking around and the bars were like letting out. So all these drunk people were like stumbling in the streets. And I'm like, oh, this is terrible. And then I run into a girl from high school who, one, is underage drinking, and two, she like grabs me and like is like talking in my face, and just the essence of alcohol was like streaming out of her, like the smell just like into my face. And I was like, ugh. And she's like, what's wrong with you? Because I'm like, I'm on mushrooms. And she's like, what's wrong with you? You know, Tristan from high school, like he recently died on mushrooms. And I was like, ah, like this is a nightmare. And it's actually true. I guess he was doing mushrooms and like they were driving down the road and he wanted to get out of the car. So they let him out on the interstate and he got hit by a truck. Like, God rest his soul. But that's like, don't do that shit. I mean, damn.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, yeah, so she's telling me this while I'm tripping balls, and I was just ah, like, get me the fuck out of here. And I'm pretty sure I ran home crying. So, you know,
That's acceptable.
yeah.
That is
but,
acceptable.
um, but yeah, I think going out, I mean, as interesting as it can be, sometimes it's just not the greatest.
Yeah.
I think the universe likes to test you and fuck with you when you're like out and about on psychedelics.
I mean, on psychedelics. I mean, what universe you live in? Because it's like constantly
Well,
testing me.
of course. But I feel like stranger things happen when you're on psychedelics. And maybe it's because it seems stranger, but in my experience, like weird shit happens. I
I
don't
can feel
know.
that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I had a mushroom trip one time. I was in college in Murfreesboro. It was the very first time that I decided to, no, it was the second time that I did mushrooms alone. And my brother was really concerned over it because at that point I was talking a lot. Like you couldn't shut me up when I was doing mushrooms. Literally, you could put me in a room by myself and I would just talk at the walls for hours and hours and hours and hours. It was a coping
So
mechanism.
what were you talking about? Like just whatever thought came into your head or
Anything and everything. Anything and everything. I like the way your hair looks. I bet it tastes like cotton candy. Can I touch your face? Ooh, look at your sweater. It's so nice. We matched today. Can I have a hug? Look at this blade of grass. Okay, these walls are super neat. I like walls. Walls are fine. Just, real rambly.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, and this actually broke it. This moment actually broke it because I decided to do them alone and I did a much higher amount than the first time I did them alone. And I would love to listen to this. Yo, Drew, if you got this, let me listen to it. I know it's hours long. I don't fucking care. He gave me his voice recorder. He hung it around my neck, and patted me on the head and said, "Now you can talk and somebody will listen." And I was the only one
Oh.
doing mushrooms. Yeah, so like I literally talked into this recorder for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And I was alone. And at one point I was on the front porch watching my neighbors through the bushes talking into my recorder. And I was like, I understand Hunter S. Thompson way too much right now. Like way too much.
I can just picture it. Oh my
Yeah, I'm like
gosh.
hiding in the bushes, like boop, like there they are. The neighbors have come home. They look like they had a good day, but I don't know. I can't really see from here. It's night. But then I decided I absolutely, hands down, 100%, if you are not a claustrophobic person and you like psychedelics, find somebody who is sober and have this experience. It's awesome. I wanted to go through a car wash on mushrooms. So I called my brother up and he was like, "Yeah, I'll take you to a car wash, but I'm really hungry. So first we're gonna go to Steak and Shake." And I was like, "All right, let's go to Steak and Shake. Sounds awesome. I'll get a shake, you know?" We walk into Steak and Shake and I am lit, right?
Mhm.
And it's prom night.
Oh God.
And we did not know this. And it was too late at night to go like anywhere else. And like this was also probably the first time I've ever had this happen to me with a stranger was on mushrooms. And yes, I have had this happen to me after since. But I walk in, and as I'm walking in, a waitress is running out, and she like kind of almost runs into me. But instead of running into me, I just grab her and hold her and hug her, and she just cries all over me for 5 minutes. And I'm just standing there, just like giving her love, like, man, I don't know what the hell's been going on in your day, but like, it's gonna be okay, babe. You're gonna make it? So, like, I'm saying things like that. Like, I'm like, it's okay. You're gonna be fine. You're loved. It's gonna be all right. Whoever hurt you is a stupid, shitty, poopy person, but you're here and it's totally fine and you're accepted. And then she like looked at me and was like, "Oh my God, thank you." And then she like sniffled and then walked out the door.
Whoa.
And I was like, well, that was an interesting moment to the beginning part of my Steak and Shake experience. So then I
But
go over.
see, that's what I'm talking about. The universe hands you some weird shit. Yeah.
This is
So
the
then,
whole reason I brought up the story.
yeah, yeah.
But then we went to the table and Drew got a burger and some fries and I got a shake and they fucking knew. They had to know. They brought me a little hat and I like colored on the hat. I put my hat on. I'm like, hey, I got a hat on. I'm like living in it. He gets done with his French fries and I like draw on his plate with ketchup. "You're lovely. Have a nice day." And then I feel really bad about it because I know that they have like a lot of dishes and I'm like, I really hope that I didn't just mess up some dishwashers like moment by just trying to write a nice cute message on their dishes. I bet that's gonna like really annoy him. And I expressed that to him and he's like, "No, they're gonna love that." And then we go to check out, and I'm like looking at this girl who's fucking beautiful on the outside. She's beautiful
Uh-huh.
on the outside. And I'm just like, like giggling over here. And I'm about to say, "Lady, You are looking so beautiful this evening. Like, you really did your prom very well. And before I can get those words out, she turns and looks me up and down and goes, ew. And then she turns back and I say in like a super loud voice, I just go, whoa, dude, did you see that? That lady was beautiful, but turns out she's just an ugly bitch.
Oh my God. Oh.
And like I'm having a great moment, like, whatever, you and me, you and you. And she like turns and looks at me, and her date is just like white faced, and then they like pay and leave, and then we're like, here's the money. I'm gonna go to a car wash, which I spent way too much money on because I made him go through like a million times.
Yeah, I bet that is super magical though.
Oh man, bubbles.
Yeah.
Bubbles. So good.
I love that. Oh, yeah. So I guess we're moving into mushroom territory, huh?
Oh yeah, I've had a lot of really good acid trips, but I have more of a love for mushrooms because it comes from nature itself. You know, like LSD is created in like lab type scenarios and settings, and it's awesome. I love it. I will totally do it, no qualms whatsoever. I
Hmm.
see different visualizations when I'm on LSD. I see, like I said, really bright shapes, sacred geometry, everything moves in this really beautiful way. When I'm on mushrooms, it's totally different visuals. And I just have had access to more mushrooms in my life, so I've done more mushrooms than I have LSD.
Yeah, I've done more mushrooms too, and I do feel more connected to mushrooms. They are natural. And also the trips are like it's like half the amount of time. And for me, that's great because I feel like towards like the end of an acid trip, you're so fucking done. Like you're ready for it to just like kind of fade out and but it's still happening, you know? It lasts so long. And for some people that's better, but for me, I kind of want to keep it like short and sweet, you know?
I don't. I'm like, oh, how long is this psychedelic gonna last? 24 weeks? Okay, no, I'm just I don't want that shit. But like fine
Yeah.
with the day. Fine with the day.
And I've like I know a lot of people say when they do mushrooms they have to purge before they start tripping. I've never thrown up on mushrooms and it's easier on my body. Acid
Mm.
like hurts my body. I feel like afterward I feel like I did a chemical. I feel really heavy and tired and like kind of gross. And then with shrooms I just feel like, "Oh, I could eat a meal and lay down and just like I'm on a fucking cloud. I'm feeling good, ready to sleep, you know?" But yeah, I think mushrooms are my favorite psychedelic.
I agree. I love them.
Mhm.
But I have taken varying degrees of mushrooms, like different dosages. I've taken a lot of different strains. Normally, if like I'm around somebody who is peddling wares and they have like a couple of different strains, I'm like, yo, tell me about this one. What is this one? Can I get one of these? Because I've never done this before. Um, so I have puked on mushrooms,
Mhm.
but sometimes I get really intense with my trips. If I know it's going to be like something that I'm doing for a spiritual reason, I'll like fast for the entire day beforehand and then eat like so. This one particular time, I fasted for an entire day beforehand. I made mushroom chocolates with dark chocolate, which is an MAO inhibitor, so it makes your trip more kapowy.
Mhm.
And then I did my very first heroic dose, which is 5 grams. And it would the come up was there. It was like
Yeah.
I ate them. I went to go pee in the bathroom. I turned around to flush the toilet and was full on tripping hard and was like,
Whoa.
what the fuck? This is the most intense trip I've ever had at that time in my life. And then like maybe 20 to 30 minutes later, I was outside and I just puked. I was just like,
Mhm.
this is gonna happen. I feel like it's gonna happen. And I vomited and I felt way better and the trip still continued.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, my trick that I made up, I don't know if it actually means anything. Whenever I would eat mushrooms and then you start to get that queasy feeling where you're like, "Oh yeah, like I could probably puke right now." I would eat a piece of fruit and it would completely stop any nausea and then my trip would just blossom and continue.
that's
So
nice.
for me, that was like, and I mean, I feel like that's why I like shrooms though. I feel like it's just more natural and so like you can eat and like it's okay. Whereas with acid, it's like I don't even think I would know how to like chew an apple. Like it's your body you get a little more disconnected from your body. Where I feel like shrooms can be very grounding, at least for me.
I have difficult time eating on mushrooms, like really difficult time. People have
Mm-hmm.
handed me food before and I've just literally sat
Just hold
holding
it.
it for like a couple of hours, then I'll like try to eat it and it's just too dry or too
Mm-hmm.
moist or too heavy or too sweet. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I feel and taste every single aspect of that food so much that I don't even want to fucking deal with that shit.
Right. I could see that.
So, I did spend like 3 hours one time. Somebody had given me, I can't eat Welch's grape jellies because of this moment. I can't. I just can't. I'm sure they're delicious. They were delicious beforehand when before we were tripping, we were eating them. And then, our trip sitter was like, "Oh, here, eat this, baby. You need some food. You need some giddy up." And I was like, "Okay." So I had the Welch's packet and the plastic packet, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted the squish, but I didn't actually want the food. So I just put the whole packet in my mouth and just like chewed on it for hours. And my brother was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I was like, "Dude, you gotta try this." So then two of us are doing this, being like super engrossed with this weird feeling going on in our mouth, like just squishy with no taste. It's just,
Uh-huh.
it's all texture at that point. And then, you know, we get laughed at by the trip sitter and she like opens one and hands it to us and I like eat it and it just was not as good as the squishy of the not eating it, to be honest. I've never been able to eat those.
That's funny.
And they also haven't changed their packaging, and that was years ago. Weird.
So speaking about like trip sitters, was that pretty common in your like, I don't know, friend group or whatever, where you guys would designate someone to babysit your trip?
So the very first time I did mushrooms, it was my brother's first psychedelic. Sorry, bro, if you don't want these stories being told about you, they're being told about you. Oops. But I had to talk him into it. He was into other different substances than I was. He likes drinking more than I do, so he was more, especially at that time in his life, like far more into that than I was. I was far more into the weed than he was. And we would
Mhm.
like meet in the middle and like make our siblingship or whatever work. But I really wanted to trip and I really wanted to trip with him, so I like talked him into doing mushrooms with me. And it was me and him, my first boyfriend, and a mutual friend of ours. And we went to a guy's house that none of us had ever met before. Ever. Like it was like a friend of our friend sent us to this guy. And when we get
Mhm.
there, we're in the middle of the deal, obviously. And he's like, "Has any of you guys ever tripped mushrooms before?" And none of us had. So we're honest and we're like, "No." And he says, "I will only sell you these mushrooms if you do them here."
Mm.
And at first I was like, "That's a little weird." But everyone else agreed to it. I was the only one who was like, "I don't know if I want that. I don't know this person. I would like wherever you are at, Mr. Person, who I have no idea, cannot remember your name, can clearly see your face, and have never seen again. Thank you. Thank you for being that responsible drug dealer because you actually made that trip a lot easier and better to handle and deal with because there was somebody sober who knew what they were doing and who could help four complete and total strangers through whatever that they were going through." So it was really cool. We stayed at his house the whole time. He We all liked him. He was a great guy. We just never hung out with him again. Ended up being like a house that I lived around later in college, which was really funny. Every time I drove by, I'd be like, "Hee hee hee hee. I know what you look like inside." My brother, I fell in love with the ceiling lamp. I was a
Mhm.
fan. She was absolutely beautiful. Her name was Edna. She was on a dimmer. She was the warmest, most beautiful. It was the first time I ever fell in love with a piece of furniture. It was not the last. My brother got caught in a loop because it was really gross outside. He really wanted to go outside, but it was wet and rainy and cold, but he really wanted to go outside. And I had to listen to him for like 2 hours on repeat,
Talking
just
about wanting to go outside.
but not being able to because it was gross
Why
outside.
didn't he just go outside and just
Well, because
be in the
he's
grossness?
tripping, and
Yeah, but
everyone keeps telling him like he wanted to go outside, but our friend was like, "No, you can't do that. It's gross out there." And she had never done it, so I think she was also kind of like, "Don't go out in the public. They're gonna know." They never know,
yeah,
you guys. They never know when you're tripping unless you are really fucking tripping. Okay.
yeah.
So at one point, I ended up just walking over to him and grabbing his shirt and literally pulling him throughout the entire house Like this is the most aggressive I've ever actually been with my brother was this moment of just pulling him because he was kind of like fighting me, but also giggling really hard over whatever the fuck was about to happen. I get to the front door, I open the door, pull him outside, shove him down, shut the door, and then walk off. Fucking fixed his loop is what I did. He came inside so grateful and happy, and then like five trips after that, I was like consistently fixing loops that he would have. Like, you got this loop, hold on. There, you're done.
Oh, that's like the role you play in his life, probably.
I mean, the role I play in my own life.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I ever tripped mushrooms, and it was a really good time. I really enjoyed it. It made me decide that I would do it again.
Mhm.
It set me on a lifelong path of loving mushrooms. All hail the fungus!
I remember, I think it was maybe this, I don't know which time I did. It was one of the first times I did mushrooms, and I had this bag of apples in my fridge, and I like wanted to throw them. Like I just had this urge to like, I want to go outside, I'm gonna throw apples, watch apples explode. This sounds amazing. So I
Sounds
went out on
amazing.
my no, I went out on my front porch, and it was kind of like a downhill to the road. And so I just stood on the porch and just started like throwing these apples, and they would like explode on the road. And I was like, this is like the coolest thing ever. And I got everyone doing it with me, and everyone's like, yeah, this is fucking awesome. And so the next morning, yeah, there were just like apples all over the road. I'm like, why did I do that? Like in that moment, it felt so fucking good and perfect. But you have these moments. But if you're not hurting anyone, and it's just like a moment of releasing whatever that like energy was, or whatever, it just felt great.
I feel
So
that.
I think you should definitely like you should explore your urges, the simple things that bring you pleasure during your trip.
For sure. When I trip, I I am a person who really likes looking at things. I love observing things and looking at things. I also really like touching things. That's
Texture,
like
dude. Texture is like, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
amazing.
So I know people who when they trip, they're like, I have to have like a canvas and my paint set out. I'm gonna put my instruments down. They have like all these creation tools. And I've like tried to do that. I'm gonna put this here and I'm gonna use that, or I'm gonna put this here and I'm gonna use that. And then I
Hmm.
ingest the substance and I'm just like not in that world. I'm in my own world, which is more tactile. I really enjoy my senses. So like I'm like smelling things. I smell everything. I'm like touching everything. I want to just sit and look. I like have sat for hours staring at the inside of an oven. Not because the oven was being hallucinated or I was seeing shapes or anything, but because I found the corners so fascinating.
Yeah.
So I really like the corners of rooms. I don't want to live in a house with corners, but I do like corners. I like the corners of rooms and how things are put together because of mushrooms. Because
Hmm.
when I first started doing mushrooms, I would lay down and like look at the ceiling and notice the places of the house that weren't I had never noticed before, and I grew to really love those places because they're typically very unseen places. And at that time, I was felt very unseen in my own life. So it was very healing for me to give love to the unseen places of the world. And in a way, it was me giving love to the unseen me.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, and I mean, when you're tripping, you can find beauty and majesty in like very mundane things.
Everything.
Yeah, I mean, literally everything. But yeah, like a corner, something you would not
Hmm.
notice normally. Um, yeah, I used to, one of my favorite things to do would be to just lay on the floor, stare at the ceiling, and then sort of like I felt like I was controlling the particles in the air with my hand, and I would kind of like draw, and I could see like, whatever little creation I was making, and I'm like, this moment is like just for me. It's just
Uh-huh.
me and the molecules, and like,
Yeah.
and I'll never see it again. Like it's like I knew it was very fleeting, and I knew it was like my own little creation, but
That's
yeah,
so fucking cute.
the visuals are, I mean, magnificent. It's nothing like it.
But at the same time, like, from what I know of, well, being who I am now and everything that I know now, I recognize that all the times that I was in that moment and seeing these things, I now know that those things are always there, even when I can't perceive them. the drugs are just allowing me to perceive them, which is allowing me to appreciate them, which is allowing me to then, when I'm not on drugs, have faith and believe that they still exist,
Mm-hmm.
which is like important to me.
Yeah, totally. So, let's talk about DMT because you have experienced that. I have not. And that's one of the drugs I hear is like the most visually shifting, and you're seeing like this maybe like you're seeing like another dimension on top of your vision that like you feel like is always there once you see it. So if you want to like speak on that a little bit, or just your experience with DMT in general.
All right, so I really like DMT. I have not met many people. They do exist, and I have met them, but I haven't met many of them who have done DMT and been like, I don't like that shit. Most people who do it like it. It's not a drug that's going to last for hours and hours and hours, but it is a drug that will give you really intense visualizations and really intense feelings. It's also called the spirit molecule.
Hmm.
It's a spiritual drug. The reason is because you are constantly creating DMT inside of your brain at this very moment, every single moment. When you die, your brain releases all of the DMT that it has, and that's what you see and feel when you journey to the other side. So if you never do a drug in your entire life, the moment you die, you are still going to be doing some kind of fucking drug because DMT will be released in your brain and you will trip really hard. Whatever heaven or hell you walk through is your choice in life. That's it. My relationship to DMT is really strange. Weird backstory time for me. I don't actually tell this to many people, so like the fact that I'm about to be really public with it kind of gives me a little bit of nervousness. So, to allow you people who are listening to this further into my brain, I want you to know that I love you and I'm open and honest, so I will tell you about this. I did DMT when I was in college. Before I did DMT, I was doing a lot of different things, a lot of different spiritual things. I was doing specific breath meditations every day. I was getting a lot into yoga. I was changing my life a whole lot. I had stopped taking birth control, which I had been on for like way too long, a lot of years. I was balancing out my own chemistry. I was eating relatively all right. Still a lot of pasta, but hey, that's a really good thing. I like pasta. And I started having these moments when I would be in one specific class. I took Japanese in college. I'm a bad student. I'm sorry, you guys. I don't actually speak Japanese, but I did take it in college. And it was always be in Japanese. I would be sitting in my seat and I would literally have this weird feeling come over me where it felt like my entire body was vibrating and it would start at my nose and then like just kind of cascade out very lightly. And it felt like I could just reach out and tear reality and go into a different reality if I wanted to. And I never did because it was scary. I honestly thought something was super wrong with me. You know, I contemplated going to see a doctor about it, but I didn't because I was afraid. That's very real. You know, I don't want something wrong with my brain. This was happening consistently, like every class for like a month, maybe two. Like it was a lot. I never saw shape manipulations, but I felt like in those moments, I could smell everything in the room and I could feel the subtle shifts of the airs around me. And if somebody moved next to me, I didn't even have to look at it. I knew which direction they were going. I knew everything. It was really weird. And then I came home for Christmas and my brother was here. Sorry, Drew, I have to tell this one on you too. Ha 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 ha. He had done DMT before because once you start down the road of fucking with your reality, you were like, how else can I do it, right? We both share that in common. And he had told me about DMT several times and I had expressed interest. So that year for Christmas, what he gave me was DMT. He gave me a DMT trip. He sat me down in my room, loaded the pipe, patted me on the head, told me everything that he thought was going to happen to me. Told me, like, what do you do? How do you do it? This is what you do. I'm going to leave you alone for your own personal sacred experience. And then he bounced. And I hit it. I hit every single bit of that DMT. And what happened to me was very lackluster. I closed my eyes and I was just in white. Everything around me was white. I wasn't in a room. There was no walls. It was limitless whiteness, which is cool now, that I've had all of my other experiences. I'm like, that meant something.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, it's not what I was expecting because it fucks with your reality so much and you see all these crazy things and you're going to meet extraterrestrials and the aliens are going to tell you what to do with your life, man. He actually told me, tell the entities hello from me. I didn't see any entities. I didn't see anything. All I was just in a white, comforting space. And so after, a couple of seconds, I kind of get tired of it and I opened my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, it was the exact same feeling that I had been having every day for a month and a half, 2 months in Japanese, where I felt like I could just rip reality. It was the same feeling. And
Whoa.
I was like, wait, are you telling me that my brain has just been making like a bunch of excess DMT and has just been like releasing it for some reason in Japanese class? I guess. I don't know. I did DMT a couple of times after that. Each time I never quote unquote blasted off until one time I was in a cave. I lived in a cave for like a week one time. It was a super great experience. Not the point of this topic though. Somebody's coming in my room.
It's okay. Ozzy's here
That was
too.
my dad, you guys. That was my father. He was
Hi,
looking for my
Dad.
mother. So, I was living in a cave for a week. I did some mushrooms. We loaded up a bowl of DMT, and I was like, kind of like over it at that point. Like, yeah, okay, I'll do some DMT, but I'm not going to see anything.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually the point of my life where my life visually drastically changed. I did not know it at the time. So it's nighttime. We do not have a fire. It's warm enough. We don't need any light. It's perfectly fine how it is. And I hit this DMT and I close my eyes. And for the first time, I see actual visualizations behind my eyelids. And it's these two absolutely gorgeous, beautiful black women doing these beautiful spinning ballet motions with the world in between them. I'm like,
Wow.
wow, you're fucking awesome. I love this. Yes. Okay. I don't know what the fuck up was with last couple of times, but this was the one? And then when I opened my eyes, I could see every single thing in the cave perfectly clearly as if it was daylight. But instead of it being like a cave, it was like I saw like sonar of the cave, but the sonar was this pulsing rainbows everywhere, and it was constantly doing the same motion over and over again. And I could navigate absolutely perfectly fine. I knew where everything was. I could look out into the forest and see the trees perfectly fine for so long in these pulsating rainbow sonar phenomena. And after that, I saw rainbows everywhere. I see rainbows everywhere. And I really think it was because of that moment on DMT.
Yeah, it like unlocked that part of your perception.
It did. I really think that it did. And I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah.
I really like DMT a lot. I think that you should, if you're going to do DMT and you've never done it before, definitely seek out somebody who has done it so they can sit with you while you do it because it can be a very terrifying experience if you've never experienced something like that. Um, Recently, I'm not going to say how recently to our viewers because statute limitation or some shit, I don't know. I'm just not prepared to give up that goose gander yet. But I mean, if you guys know me, which you all do, you probably know exactly how long ago it was. Anyways, for a special day of mine recently, I did a bunch of DMT, and it was the most visual experience I've ever had in my entire life. I didn't even close my eyes, and I was staring at this cartoon, beautiful cartoon world with all these crazy cool colors, people were working on farms and milking cows, and then suddenly these little black wheels like came through everything and they were turning, and it was like I could see their molecules turning, and then I was listening to music, and then all of a sudden it was like there were absolutely no words, just feelings and sensations of absolute total acceptance and divine love washing over me and going through me. And it wasn't just going through me, I was returning it back. It was a mutual love moment. And then I just totally lost complete control over my body and started dancing because I was listening to music, and that confession time happens to me when I dance. So it was like this really super beautiful moment, you know? It
Yeah.
was very great.
So in general, like are the visuals stronger when you close your eyes?
I
Is
would
that how it
have thought
works?
so.
Yeah.
um, but my recent experience was that it was so much that it didn't matter if my eyes were open or closed, I saw the same thing, which is what I've always wanted from a hallucination. All the other times before that, I've closed my eyes because I have just assumed that I wouldn't see anything.
Hmm.
And I think that I've seen more because my mind has a blank space to put on top of it. You know, sometimes now if I do DMT, I can see, like, of course, the spirit molecule of rainbows, like creating intricate little patterns and beautiful things all around me, and this like swirling motion. When I did it recently, how it began was I was laying in my bed and I saw the molecules rise up from my bed and also like start to come down, and then they like melded. And then when they reached each other and melded, my reality shifted completely, and I was in a totally different reality. And I
Wow.
was watching it. I wasn't really interacting with it. Those people did not know I was there.
And then does it fade out gradually or does it just like stop?
It fades out gradually.
Yeah, that's what I
It
would
fades out
imagine.
gradually.
That's so interesting. I don't know why I have, well, I probably do know. I have so much anxiety around psychedelics and just a little backstory on me. I did drugs real heavy from like 18 to 21, and then I had like crippling anxiety. Just like kind of showed up one day. I had a really intense panic attack while I was like laying in bed trying to sleep. It wasn't even like I was nothing scary was happening, and I just had a string of like really intense panic attacks over the course of a few months, and I felt so um, debilitated from like regular life. Everything like freaked me out because I didn't know what was like the catalyst for this anxiety. So like I was just afraid of everything because you never know when a panic attack is going to strike.
Mm.
And I chalked it up to like, okay, maybe I did too many drugs. Like maybe I pushed it too far and maybe I need to like take a break. And it was even to the point where I couldn't drink coffee, obviously, like couldn't do any stimulants, couldn't really drink, didn't really want to go out, didn't really want to talk to people, didn't really want to do anything. And so I found this technique online called self realization because what I was experiencing, the scariest part wasn't even the panic attacks. It was the derealization, which is like when you look in the mirror, you feel like you're not looking at yourself. Like you feel so out of body all the time that you just you feel like something has taken over your body almost and like
Mm.
you don't have control anymore. And then to have these like crazy panic attacks on top of that is just you're like, yeah, I'm going to die. Like my soul's going to slip out of my body and there's nothing I can do to stop it. That's how I felt. But anyway, self-realization is a technique. Anyone that has panic attacks, anyone that has anxiety, I urge you to look it up because it changed my life and it kept me off of any type of like anxiety medication. But basically, you just you focus on the physical feelings of the anxiety in your body as they arise, and the more you do this, then the fear subsides because you're facing it head on. It's really interesting, and I mean, it takes practice, but like at this point in my life, even if I feel a panic attack coming on, I can stop it. So it gives you so much strength and control over yourself, and honestly, like I'm really glad with all the psychedelic and drug experiences I had, but I feel like I was at this like tipping point, and I think the anxiety was a way for me to like, okay, stop. Like let's take everything you've learned and now let's integrate it into your life and let's stop using drugs as like an escape or like this thing to do for fun or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, years went by before I ever touched a psychedelic again. And so now when I do, I know that I'm anxiety prone. So I have to like really prepare myself to be like, okay, this is a choice you're making, set your intention. Like what's your goal here and how are you going to navigate when it gets weird? Because it's going to get weird and you can't let yourself like freak out, right? So, yeah, I think it just taught me a lot of control and a lot of reverence for these drugs, these
Good.
powerful, powerful allies.
Good.
Yeah. So the idea of like DMT, as intriguing as it is, and I think I will do it one day. It's like something that I'm really cautious about. So it's something I would have to like plan out and, psych myself up for. And
I feel
I
that.
also I feel like these opportunities will arise naturally. Like I
Mhm.
feel like you when you go and seek out drugs, it's almost like
It's not the
yeah,
right
like
time.
yeah, you have to let it come to you and it will come to you. It will.
Hmm.
If you want it and you need it and it's right for you, it will. So,
Yeah, so last year I was in what is the Joshua Tree. It was the first time I've ever been to Joshua Tree. Joshua Tree is beautiful. They have such old rock people. They're like some of the oldest rocks I've ever met in my life. And my brother was like, "Hey, guess what I got?" And I was like, that looks like a pipe." DMT. So we smoked DMT in these like really, really ancient rocks, and I didn't blast off. I very rarely like have visuals. So when I do have visuals, I like am really excited about it, because it's one of the things that I want. And it was the only time I've ever received a message from it.
ooh.
It was like a really interesting message that was very real for me that I was like, "Oh, okay. I need to figure out how to work on myself. I need to figure out how to navigate this so I can bring this into my life and become this part of my community. Find the community that works the best with me so that I can become what DMT just told me to become."
Mhm.
Which was really interesting because like the whole, my whole last year was like find your life purpose. And I think that was like kind of like a slap in the face, like, yo, this is it. Figure this
Mhm.
shit out. So like you can get really interesting and good and beautiful realizations from it if you're listening. But once again, I will say that was the second time I ended up in a white place. When I hit it, I closed my eyes and I was in a white area. And then I did, it wasn't even like words. It was like this feeling and sensation that trickled down into my body. And then my brain put it into words for me.
Mhm.
Because the universe doesn't speak in English. The universe speaks in feelings and emotions and
Mhm.
sensations. And our brain puts it into words. And that's just how that works.
Yeah.
So just be aware,
Wow.
of your feelings and your emotions and your sensations. And when you listen to those, then your brain will put it into a way that you can actually make sense of it.
Mhm. And I think it will present that information to you when you're ready to receive that information.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, it's such a multifaceted thing that happens in your mind when you do psychedelics. Like, it can go anywhere from just like scaring the shit out of you to giving you this like divine message. I mean, it's
Hmm.
so unique for everybody.
Or showing you simply that the corner of the room that you've never looked at is absolutely stunning. And maybe you should appreciate things that you never looked at before.
Mhm. Yeah, shift in perspective for
Yeah.
sure.
That's like one of the things my life has been really all about over the course of the last 10 years is how much can I shift my perspective? I can have more than one perspective. How many perspectives can I gain for one thing? Like, I've really experimented with that and messed around with that, and it's created me. It's
Mhm.
created me. And so drugs have helped with that because drugs always take you out of your situation and show you a different perspective of that situation.
Mhm.
Bad perspective or good perspective, it's nothing more than a different perspective.
True. Um, yeah, I would like to talk about MDMA a little bit because it is so popular and it's
Oh, yeah, it
so
is.
so loved. And I think that's where we get into the idea of like worship versus abuse because
Yeah.
MDMA is the most euphoric drug. Like it dumps all of your serotonin into your system. So of course, like you've never felt so good, right?
Hmm.
And I think that can be grounds for like a lot of healing work, but it also can be grounds for addiction.
Sure can.
Yeah.
Absolutely sure can. It also, I think it's the amygdala that works with your fear. It like turns off your fear in your brain, so you have no fear when we're on ecstasy or
Hmm.
MDMA. But it also pumps up your cortisol levels, so you since you're in an actual stressed situation with absolutely no fear, it is a really good drug in order to learn because if you have high stress levels, then you can learn better. It's
Hmm.
going to stand out more and stick in your brain. However, it is addictive because people often can't feel these ways without it because
Hmm.
they don't know how to boost their own serotonin levels naturally within themselves, which they can do, they just often forget how to do.
True. And once you do MDMA and you're like drained of this serotonin, it does take work to build it back up. So if you're continually in this cycle of like, I want to feel better, I'm going to keep, taking MDMA, like it's this cyclical pattern of getting yourself into a really dark place because you're
Mm-hmm.
just draining your natural joy for life.
Mm-hmm.
And
It
so, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
it also like the kickback from MDMA can take up to a week for you to fully feel because the drug can be in your system for that long as like kind of like a micro dosage, so you can like feel really great up to a week and then after a week you can just have a super hard crash where you spiral really deeply into depression because your brain has used up absolutely all of its serotonin and you don't really have an adequate way of putting it back. You do. There are always, that's what self-care is building your own serotonin levels back up.
Hmm.
Like I take baths, I sing songs, I make music, I dance, I go for night walks in nature. If I can't have the gumption to do any of those things, then I talk to a friend, I talk to a loved one, I eat something that I really like to eat, even if it's bad for me. I still fucking eat it because it makes me happy.
Hmm.
I sing other people's music if I can't make my own music. There's so many things that I do to try to bring up my own serotonin levels naturally.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I will say, I don't think I've ever felt as inhibition free and like willing to express myself creatively, emotionally, spiritually with my close friends as I have on MDMA. Like,
Hmm.
for sure. And those memories are very special to me. And there were like magical moments that happened that I will cherish forever. But at the same time, I know that I was in like party mode and I know that I outdid it. And it started to feel really artificial and
Hmm.
really kind of gross. And then I would have these moments, which maybe like I didn't know at the time, but it was leading up to my anxiety. I would feel really tense on ecstasy, but then it was like a muscle like contracting, and I'd feel really tense and uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do, and then 5 minutes later, it was like, oh yeah, I feel good again. Okay, like what the fuck was that? And then I would like tense up again, and so yeah, it just I don't know, it got kind of dangerous, and like I don't think I'll probably ever revisit that. But I did have beautiful moments, and it can be beautiful, and it can be like healing and build like a strong sense of relationship and connection.
Hmm. I know MAPS is doing, or they were a couple years ago, they were doing a lot of different research over how to help heal people through PTSD with it. And
Mhm.
they were having phenomenal,
Oh yeah.
phenomenal results with that. But, they are also professionals doing professional things, as
Right.
humans who just take party drugs, we're not we're professional partiers.
Yeah.
It's just not something you really, you know, that's not going to help you move through your shit because you don't want to move through your shit at a party. You want
Oh,
to have a
you're
good
trying to
time at your
dance
party.
and get
Yeah.
a massage. Get in the shower. You're not trying to fucking yeah, heal some shit. Although like
Oh
I
God,
do
that's
think
true.
in certain relationships or the relationship I was in at the time of doing a lot of this, we would have a lot of our really hard talks like coming off of ecstasy, and it was like very connecting and you just felt close and safe and like I could tell you anything right now. Like I just want to tell you how I feel or how I've been feeling or what bothered me or, you know,
Mhm.
and you have these like bonding moments.
Just
But
super random and I think really cool information. The original street name for MDMA was not ecstasy. It was empathy
oh,
because it makes you more empathetic.
oh yeah.
Empathetic. Yeah. It's like if you do not know what empathy feels like at all, go get you a point of Molly. You will know. You will
Yeah.
understand what compassion and empathy truly feels like because that is what this drug gears you to do, which is also why it's so addictive because when you feel empathetic, you fucking feel great.
You feel connected. Yeah. And you feel, yeah.
And we all crave that connection and we don't always get that connection, but when you are on MDMA, you feel it so much. And because feelings are electrical and magnetic, and that's how we can communicate with others in a very real way, when you get around others, even if they are not on it, they are going to react more empathetically toward you because
Mm-hmm.
you're so fucking lit on it.
Mm-hmm.
You're so big with it. This is the reason I don't do MDMA in public settings because I am aware that I'm fairly magnetic as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I go around strangers on MDMA, like no, I need to be in a safe place.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want somebody like
Like coming for you, trying to drain your energy out. And yeah.
yeah, like you guys, I weigh like less than 115 pounds. That's pick upable.
Pick up a bowl.
That's pick
Like,
upable.
you're coming with me.
No, please stop, sir.
Oh God.
It's true, like that's real, and I am very
Yeah.
aware.
Yeah.
So try to stay aware
Mm-hmm.
every chance you get.
Yeah, I think like the clinical trials and research they're doing with MDMA is like going to be super important and transform a lot of like psychotherapy. But as a party drug, it can be a little dangerous.
It can be. I mean, yeah, it totally can be. I think it's also interesting to note that before you decide that you want to take MDMA as a substance to help heal you from emotional trauma and get to know somebody better, A, you are on a drug. So if somebody is on a drug with you, they are not like they are also just as changed as you are. That doesn't show you who they really are. It shows you what they are in that moment. Be very careful with that because we all have that moment where, we fall in love with a stranger because they're so beautiful, but they just fucked up,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know? That's it. Be
Yeah.
careful. Choose your drug buddies wisely.
Hmm.
Do it with people that you know and do it with people that you trust because those are your safe places. These are intense things that need safe places. Always do healing work in a safe place.
Hmm. Yeah, being with people you trust is really important. I do have a personal story that's like embarrassing, but my friend and I, we did like a couple rolls and we went to Nashville to like party, right? We were living in Clarksville at the time. So we drove to Nashville. We had a great fucking drive. We were like blasting the tunes. We were feeling good. And so which I don't recommend driving on drugs
No,
ever.
no, don't do it.
But
Don't do
we
it.
were young and dumb. So we go to this like club and we're partying and like we meet these dudes. And then like somehow my friend is like outside smoking with these like new friends she made and decides to like smoke meth for the first time because she's on ecstasy and she's like, "Oh, fuck yeah, like that sounds awesome. Like you guys seem really cool." And if I had been with her in that moment, I would have been like, "Hey, like Nat, come on, like come to
No.
reality. We're not smoking meth. Like what are you doing?" But I wasn't there. So then she comes up to me, she finds me in the club and she's like, "Oh my god, I just smoked meth. I feel fucking amazing. Like this is crazy." And I'm like, "You smoked meth? Like what?" And so these dudes are like there, I guess, overhearing us, and they're like, "Oh, are you guys like rolling or whatever?" And then we're like, "Yeah." And so we start dancing with them, and then like the club's closing, and then they're like, "Hey, we have more ecstasy. You should come to our house." And we're like, "Yeah, okay." And so that's one dangerous thing. You're young and stupid, and then you don't want your roll to end. So if someone's
Yeah.
offering you more, you're like, "Oh, fuck yeah, like let's keep it going." So we like end up going back to their place, and they did have more, and we did more. We rolled for way too fucking long, like into the next night. It was horrible. But the scariest part is that we like realized we are in these two strange guys like house. We are young, naive girls, like fucked up with two strange dudes. And like everything you've ever read, everything Dare has ever taught you, your internal instinct is like, yeah, what the fuck? Like, that's not safe. That's not cool. And so luckily we escaped like unharmed. They were like, they ended up being like solid dudes who didn't try to like rape us or, drug us or whatever. So we got really, really lucky. But I mean, that was probably like the dumbest thing I've ever done, honestly.
Yeah, I'll say that's
And
really dumb.
it was so dumb. And ecstasy was like this. That's when I was kind of like, man, this is like a problem if we're like following strangers home to like get more drugs, you know?
And that is
Like
a thing that
total
has
loss of,
happened.
yeah, total loss of intuition, total loss of like our compass and just
Because
fuck.
it shuts down your fear receptors, so you're totally unfeared. You're like, oh, this is gonna be great. I'm not afraid of this in the moment. And like that is cool, but at the same time, that's also incredibly dangerous
Yeah.
because you have fear for a reason. And thank
Oh
God you
yeah.
didn't get fucked up
So
for
that's
than
a
you did.
yeah, that's a situation where it can be super dangerous and really stupid, and you have to like take your environment into account. And so because yeah, you'll be liable to like make some dumb choices because you're feeling so good.
It's true.
So the safer your environment, the less dumb choices you can make.
Or the safe dumb choices you can make,
Exactly.
like throwing
Exactly.
apples.
Yeah, or like let's get dressed up and dance around. Like
Let
yeah,
me do
do
your
that.
makeup. Like, yeah, okay, put your makeup. This is great.
Exactly. Yeah. So I speak from experience when I say fucking don't take MDMA lightly.
Yeah, don't take any of these drugs lightly. You're altering the basic fundamental aspects of your reality, and like it's it's gonna change you. It will change you. It's not like a thing that you're gonna go like, "Oh, I did acid last weekend and I feel totally fine." Like if you are that person, baby, I love you. Check yourself. You are unaware because this shit changes you.
Hmm.
I see things literally totally different than I did years ago because I've done drugs. I see them differently mentally, physically, emotionally, on every single spectrum. I've gained so many wonderful perspectives and wonderful reality shifts because that's what I went in wanting. That's
Hmm.
my goal in life.
Yeah.
Be careful with what you do with your reality. Like if you get fucked up drunk every weekend, that's totally fine, 100% acceptable. But that is still a drug and you are still changing your reality in a different way. Be
Hmm.
responsible with your reality. I don't give a fuck about your life. Be responsible with your life if you want, but be responsible with your reality because those two things are different.
Hmm. Yeah. You got to approach these things with respect and reverence and oh, yeah. So last thing I
That
want to just
that
talk
hit you a little
about.
hard?
What? A
Did that
fart?
hit you a little hard?
Oh,
You like change your demeanor changed a lot. You're like, oh,
no.
Be careful.
So then the last one I want to talk about is ketamine, which again, I have not done, but you have. So
I
talk
have
about
done
it.
ketamine. It's a intense disassociative. It's the most disassociated I have ever been in my life. Like we did an experiment one time. We did a bunch of ketamine, and then like I have a mat that's got spiky things on it to like bring up your I guess like blood flow or whatever, and like you can literally press your hand down on it as hard as you want, and you're like, this feels like nothing. I don't feel any kind of pain because I'm so disassociated out of my body right now.
Mhm.
I would not do it at a party, though I did do it at a party one time, and it was a very interesting and fun time, but that's mostly because of the safe people that I was with. It was a like family party, you know? It wasn't like a stranger party. I didn't go to a bar, I didn't go to a club. It was like,
Mhm.
oh, this party is here. These are all of really good friends. You're gonna do it, I'm gonna do it, you're gonna do it. Okay, well, I'm fucking totally doing it then. And then, it was like one of those really cool moments. It's difficult to move on, but if you can move, it's really fun to move on because it just feels like you're wobbling through this crazy weird time space thing. Uh,
Mhm.
what I actually really like to do on it is chant. Because if you are if you and another person are doing it, you are going to like automatically harmonize and you're going to hit the most beautiful notes. And it doesn't matter what the notes are, they're always going to be absolutely gorgeous. Like fucking angels singing. I'm not even making it up. I wish I was. I wish I could be like, don't do ketamine, boys and girls. But I mean, I like ketamine. I don't do it often at all. It's a very hard drug. It's super, super hard. And when I do it, I like to be around people I know who like make noises because like when you chant on it, it sounds like angels singing. It sounds like you are like channeling the angelic realm and it also feels like you can just hold that note for hours, which you probably can. I'm not sure. Time gets super wibbly over there. What is time? Who knows? Definitely don't ever ask anybody on ketamine what time it is because they're going to be like, okay.
So, are there any visuals associated with ketamine?
I am not the one to ask because I have only done moderate doses of ketamine. It actually makes me nervous to do a really high amount of ketamine. I don't want to do a high amount of ketamine. I want to do enough ketamine where I can chant and be happy and feel
Mhm.
good. Um, I do know people who ketamine is one of their drugs of choice, and when they do
Mhm.
it, it's like they need somebody who isn't on ketamine to be there with them because I have seen instances where like you're talking to them and then they just like crumple to the floor and hit their head really hard and
Ooh.
they don't even realize it and you're like, "Yo, dude, like please come back to me." Like I really don't want this to be one of those moments. Drugs are dangerous. It
Mhm.
can be one of those moments. I've also seen this specific person have that exact same thing happen and then sit up and act like they're driving a car complete with making noises and you're like, I have no idea where the hell you're at right now. Your bump was way bigger than mine,
Yeah.
like way bigger. So you can get visuals on it. I've never had visuals on it. I don't suggest doing that much of it.
Mhm.
I think that is a very heavy drug. It's the heaviest drug I've ever done. Once again, I don't do it often. When I do it in very safe places. I haven't done it in like 2 years. Um, it needs to be in the right location with the right people, and I need to know that I'm going to be physically safe.
Mhm.
That's very big in my life is to remain physically safe as well as emotionally safe. True. Uh, it it's a hell of a drug.
Yeah. So I know they're doing clinical studies also with ketamine, and like they'll do an intramuscular um, injection, and then they'll have you like lay back on a couch with a blindfold, so you're laying there with your eyes closed, having this like therapeutic experience. But I just wonder, like aside from that situation and environment, like I don't know how healing necessarily ketamine can be. Like,
Ah,
so yeah, what do you think about that?
well, I haven't had a situation where ketamine has helped healed me, mostly
Mhm.
because when I've done it, I've been in a really good place. However, man, I really want to like tell the story in the full, but I also don't want to say any names because I know this person wouldn't like that. So, a person who used to be very close to me, and drastically and quickly was not close to me. That's the nicest way I can say that. Was going
Mhm.
through a really hard time over situations that I recognize I put this person through, and I have apologized profusely over the last like 5 years, as much as I possibly can. Um, but they were going through a really, 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 really rough time accepting the reality that had thus appeared in them, which is that I was no longer in their life the way that they wanted them to be. And they did a bunch of ketamine, and it helped them move through that
Hmm.
easier. And it wasn't their idea. They had always been like, ketamine, I don't want to do that. This seems so bad for you, right? I mean, it's a horse tranquilizer. It's not great for you.
Right. Right.
But the people that he was with talked him into it. And the only reason I actually know anything about it is because they are also good friends of mine. And they wanted me to know that he was feeling a lot better and that he was moving through stuff and that he was seeing things a lot more clearly. And they told me it was because of the ketamine. The
Mm-hmm.
ketamine allowed him to see the situation from a completely disassociated standpoint of it without any feelings or attachments to it, and to then logically walk through it in a healthy manner.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it can be very healing. Has it healed me? No, I just dick around on it, to be honest. I use other substances to heal myself, and I also do a lot of healing work when I'm not on substances, like a lot of healing
Mm-hmm.
work when I'm not on substances. So I've never personally experienced that, but I do know people who have experienced it.
Good to know. Yeah, ketamine's one of those that's just never really interested me. I don't know. We're all different, but never
It never
appealed to
interested
me.
me until a cute boy came along. Stupid cute boys.
You want to do ketamine together?
Well, okay. I don't regret that. That was actually like one of the hardest conversations I've ever had with Zach Lerman.
Yeah.
He made me cry.
Oh.
He made me fucking cry. And like all I could do was accept everything that he was saying because it was 100% the truth. And I'm so glad that he said everything he said. And I was just like, you're fucking absolute. I guess it did help me heal in a
There
way
you go. Yeah.
because he, like, we'd done it and it was the first time I'd ever done it. And like, I had a really, really, really great time. And then he came in and said some very real things to me that needed to be said that I already knew. I just didn't want in that moment to be true.
Hmm.
And he just said them in his way, you know his way.
He's good at that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I fucking wept. Like he said them and then he left, he went into a different room and then I like followed him and I apologized and was just still crying and he was like, "It's gonna be okay." And I was like, "I just want you to know how much I love you for saying it, for being the
Mm-hmm.
friend that shows up at that time, at every time that it's needed to be said." And he says the hard things when you need to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a great friend.
Yeah.
And then, I was like, "I'm gonna go home." And he was like, "No, you're not. You're gonna stay here until you're done tripping. And then you're gonna go home because you need to go home." I was like, "Thanks once again." Thanks once again.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I don't know. It's an interesting drug to think about. I mean, I imagine a disassociative could help you work through anything painful because you can disassociate from that pain
Mhm.
and just kind of observe it
But
and work.
once again, like, don't disassociate all the time. Be responsible with your
Right.
reality. I can't stress that enough, you guys. Like, being a responsible adult is incredibly important. Like, yeah, it's not fun sometimes, but nobody likes burning their food. So, like, make up your fucking mind. Being a responsible adult means not burning your food.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really great to feel like, hey, I didn't burn my food. I get to eat this delicious meal tonight because I'm a responsible adult.
Mm-hmm.
You
I
know?
think for me, all these drugs have made me into a more like well-rounded, perceptive, empathetic person. And so I've taken that into my life, into my real everyday life, and
Mhm.
used it to just be a better version of myself and to just get more out of my life, you know?
Same,
Yeah.
same. Like,
So,
I would not be who I am without the drugs, but I also don't use drugs every day. I don't use drugs once a month. I don't use. I very rarely do drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been very moderate with my drug use. I had one like couple of months where it wasn't very moderated, and I got done with that and was just like, "Look, man, I can't do this anymore. We're gonna have to stop." And then we like took a very serious break from it, and it helped both people, like me and my partner at the time, to be
Mm-hmm.
a lot better and more grounded and centered and know what we wanted in life rather than just fucking off into the wind like we were.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the thing that happens to people who use drugs frequently is they just fuck off into the wind, you know? Okay, that's fine. Like, that's your life. Choose to do whatever you want with it. It will always be accepted by me. I'm always here to accept you. But beware, I'm gonna say some things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you come to me and you want help, we're gonna talk about all of it, and I will tell you how I really feel about it. I
Yeah.
love you, but you fucking off under the wind too much. Maybe that's why you don't feel grounded, because you're like not grounded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think drugs, yeah, they're a very like important tool for healing, but they're not the only tool, and they're not to be taken lightly. It's like
Mm-mm,
it's like these big moments in your life that you have, these big healing moments, and you can't have a big healing moment every weekend. So
mm-mm.
you have to give it time, and you have to like process, and you have to do work outside of drugland on your own in reality, where it's like painful and real and raw. You have to work through those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the path that we are walking and that we talk about walking is the hardest path that anyone could ever take. It's also the most rewarding path that anyone could ever take. Drugs help by being the reward, the path, and the pain all at the same time. But so does doing it on your own. And in a lot of ways, doing it on your own, while it is a lot harder, it is a lot more rewarding because, you know, like I have spoken about my problem with marijuana or cannabis. I have a problem with cannabis. I've had problems with cannabis. My biggest problem was is that I couldn't do the work outside of me without the cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
So when I stopped smoking cannabis, I had to learn how to do the work inside of me without that. And it was
Mm-hmm.
a crutch. It was such a crutch that I had a lot of difficult times trying to figure it out. And I had really great friends who helped me in that moment, patted me on my head, and told me that, you know, I'm not an unfun bitch. I'm just going through a withdrawal,
Yeah.
which is true. So, you know, safe spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an unfun bitch.
No, you a fun little bitch. I tell you what.
Woo!
Oh.
Okay, well, we're gonna wrap this up. This is all we got for you guys today. If you want to talk about your drug experience, if you have a moment in your life where you did some drugs and were like, holy shit, what does this mean? Or, oh my God, this was super important to me. Reach out to us, man. We fucking love hearing about that shit for real. Drug stories are
Yes.
really some of the funnest stories I've ever heard. Like, you mean your body stretched from one end of the room to the other and you just teleported like that? Like, flip, that's cool. Talk about it. You know, we're safe spaces. We'll always be safe spaces for you guys. Reach out to us, talk to us. If you want to know more about our own uses of drugs, I'm free to talk about it. I'm very open. I have no secrets. I will remain secretless until I die. If you have a question, ask me. Unfortunately, it will be the truth. So ask wisely.
Fortunately and unfortunately, it will be
Yeah,
the
my
truth.
parents hate that rule a lot.
They don't want the truth.
Oh, well, it's just like I've had that rule since I was like 10 years old. Like if you want to know the truth, if you want to know the answer to a question, ask me and I'll tell you the truth. And they have asked questions where I have literally replied with, "Do you want to know the truth to that?" And then they're like, my mom has done it like 3 times, like, actually I don't. Because we both like I just obviously answered your question, duh. But
Mhm.
like that's real. If you guys need help with any substance abuse problems, there are resources. We are once again here for you there. I have gone through substance abuse problems. I know what it feels like. I know that it's shitty and it's sucky, and I know that you can do it, and I want to support you through that process in every single way. So, we're always here for you.
Yep, we're here for you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Thank you for listening. Okay, bye.
Peace out.